Emily stepped out of her apartment into the crisp afternoon air, her heart pounding in her chest. Today was the day she was supposed to meet Daniel's family for the first time, just a week before their wedding, and yet she felt far from ready. She had rehearsed conversations in her head, imagined polite smiles and small talk, but Daniel's message that morning had thrown everything off balance. "Meet them differently," he had said, and left her with a winking emoji. The words echoed in her mind. As she walked toward the cafe, what did he mean? Was he asking her to act differently, to dress differently, or something she couldn't even imagine yet? As she turned the corner, she saw Daniel sitting at their usual table by the window, a soft smile on his face. His eyes lit up the moment he spotted her, and for a second, her anxiety eased. "Hey," he said, standing to pull out her chair, his voice low and calm. "Relax, Emily. I'll explain everything in a minute." She tried to force a smile, but her stomach twisted in knots. "Relax?" she thought. "How can I relax when I don't even know what I'm supposed to do?" Emily sat down and smoothed the skirt of her dress, trying to look casual though every muscle in her body was tense. Daniel reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Just trust me," he whispered, and she felt a flicker of hope. Something in his gaze told her that this wasn't about testing her or embarrassing her. It was about something deeper, something meaningful. The bell above the cafe door chimed, and Daniel's parents walked in, immediately catching Emily off guard. She had seen pictures of them, met Daniel's stories about them, but seeing them in real life felt different. Margaret, his mother, was warm and inviting, her smile genuine, while James, his father, had that quiet strength that made you feel safe just by looking at him. They approached the table, and Emily instinctively straightened, feeling the weight of their gaze, expecting the usual polite inspection that first meetings often brought. "Emily, it's so nice to finally meet you," Margaret said, embracing her lightly, her voice soft and welcoming. Emily returned the hug, her nerves momentarily easing. She had imagined this moment 100 times, but it was nothing like the reality of standing there, feeling the warmth of his mother's acceptance. She looked at Daniel, searching for a clue about what he meant by differently, but he only smiled, that quiet, knowing smile that always made her heart skip. They all sat down, and the conversation began. Small talk first, the usual questions about work, hobbies, and family, but Daniel subtly steered it in a new direction, asking Emily questions that went beyond polite surface chatter. "What are you most proud of?" he asked, and then leaned closer. "What's something about you no one really knows?" Emily blinked at him, startled, but also intrigued. She hesitated for a moment, then began to speak, sharing stories of her childhood, little victories she had quietly cherished, small insecurities she usually kept hidden. As she spoke, she noticed how Daniel's parents were listening, really listening, their expressions soft, encouraging, and accepting, not just nodding politely, but watching her with genuine interest. Emily felt a warmth spreading through her chest, a sense of being seen, truly seen, that she hadn't realized she craved so deeply. Daniel's hand brushed hers under the table, a small, grounding reminder that she wasn't alone in this, that he had orchestrated this for a reason. Margaret laughed gently at one of Emily's stories, her eyes sparkling. "I can see where Daniel gets his sense of humor," she said, and Emily smiled, feeling a flicker of confidence. She realized she wasn't performing or pretending. She was just being herself, and for the first time, it felt enough. James leaned forward, his voice calm but warm. "Daniel has always said that the most important thing in a relationship is to feel understood, to feel seen for who you really are." Emily looked at Daniel, and in that moment, she felt her heart swell. understanding what he had meant by meeting them differently. The usual tension of first meetings melted away, replaced by something deeper, something quiet but powerful. She could feel the bond forming, not just with Daniel's parents, but with Daniel himself. The connection between them strengthened in the shared silence, in the shared laughter, in the unspoken understanding that had nothing to do with small talk or appearances. Emily realized that Daniel's plan wasn't to impress his family with her words or charm, but to create a space where she could be entirely herself and be accepted for it. Emily's mind raced as she noticed small details she had overlooked before, the way James nodded thoughtfully at her stories, the way Margaret's eyes softened when she spoke about her dreams, the subtle way Daniel guided the conversation, giving her the freedom to open up without ever making her feel pressured. It was an artful balance of control and care, and Emily couldn't help but admire it. She had never felt so safe, so comfortable, in a first meeting, and yet, there was still that flutter of nerves, that reminder that this was the first real step toward marrying Daniel, a step that carried all the weight of expectation and hope. Then, just as Emily began to settle completely into the warmth of the evening, Daniel's phone buzzed quietly on the table, and his expression shifted for a brief moment, a shadow crossing his usually calm face. Emily's stomach lurched, a flicker of panic hitting her. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice soft, but tinged with concern. Daniel hesitated, then shook his head with a small, reassuring smile. "Yes, it's nothing serious, just a reminder that life keeps moving, even when we wish it would pause," he said, his eyes returning to her. "But tonight was important. I wanted it to be about us, about you feeling at home here, before everything else happens." Emily nodded slowly, feeling the meaning of his words sink in. She realized that this wasn't just a casual meeting, it was a carefully crafted moment of connection, a bridge between her world and his family, and it had worked beautifully. Emily's gaze shifted around the cafe again, taking in the scene, the soft lighting, the gentle hum of conversation, the way Daniel's parents leaned in toward her, listening, laughing, engaging without judgment. She felt a deep, almost overwhelming sense of gratitude and relief. Here, she could be herself, and she could see Daniel's world through his eyes, in a way she had never imagined. She realized that all the nervous rehearsals and anxious questions had been unnecessary, because the meeting wasn't about perfection, it was about honesty, openness, and the quiet magic of being understood. Time seemed to stretch, yet move quickly, as the family shared stories, exchanged gentle teasing, and laughed at little jokes that Emily didn't need to explain. She felt lighter with every passing minute, and a soft, steady warmth grew in her chest, a feeling of belonging she hadn't expected. Daniel's hand brushed hers again, a small, grounding touch that reminded her of the deeper connection they shared, and how much he had cared about making this night meaningful, not just for his parents, but for her. Emily thought about the week ahead, the final preparations for the wedding, the excitement, and the chaos that awaited, but in this moment, she allowed herself to breathe, to feel, to enjoy the rare simplicity of connection and acceptance. She understood now what Daniel had meant by meeting them differently, and it wasn't about how she looked, or what she said, or how charming she could be. It was about being seen for who she really was, and being accepted for it. By the time the meeting drew to a close, Emily felt a quiet confidence she hadn't felt before. She had entered the cafe anxious and uncertain, but she was leaving it with a sense of clarity, warmth, and a deepened love for Daniel. He had shown her not just his family, but the heart of who he was, the way he cared for people, the gentle thoughtfulness that defined him, and Emily realized that this understanding was a gift, a rare and precious gift that would stay with her long after the days. Nerves faded. As they walked out together, the cool evening air wrapping around them, Emily squeezed Daniel's hand, a soft smile on her lips. "I think I understand now," she whispered, her voice full of emotion. "I see them differently, and I see you differently too." Daniel's smile was warm and quiet, his eyes full of a love that went beyond words. "That's all I ever wanted," he said softly, and in that moment, Emily felt a wave of certainty, a reassurance that no matter what the next week brought, they were ready to face it together. And though the wedding was still days away, and though life promised to be busy and unpredictable, Emily knew that this evening, this first real meeting, had changed everything. She had met Daniel's family differently, and in doing so, she had discovered a new depth to her own heart, a new understanding of love, trust, and the quiet power of connection. The week before her wedding no longer felt like a countdown filled with anxiety, but a promise, a beginning, and Emily stepped forward with hope, excitement, and the certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The next evening, Emily felt a nervous excitement as she prepared herself to meet Daniel's family again. But this time it wasn't just about introductions or polite conversation. Daniel had promised her that tonight would be different, that she would meet them differently, and though she didn't know exactly what he meant, a flutter of anticipation ran through her chest. She dressed simply but elegantly, choosing soft colors that made her feel confident and comfortable. She had learned from the previous meeting that appearances were not the point. Honesty and openness were, and tonight she intended to give both. When she arrived at Daniel's family home, the warm glow of the living room lights spilled out into the evening, welcoming her even before she stepped inside. Margaret greeted her with a hug, and Emily felt the same calm warmth as yesterday. But tonight the atmosphere carried something deeper, more intimate. The house smelled faintly of fresh bread and tea, small comforts that made Emily feel immediately at ease. She followed Daniel into the living room, where his father, James, was reading quietly in an armchair, and Daniel's younger sister, Sophie, was scrolling through her phone on the couch. Their smiles were welcoming, but Emily sensed that Daniel had a plan for how this meeting would unfold, guiding her towards something meaningful rather than just superficial conversation. "Emily, I want you to sit wherever you feel comfortable," Daniel said, his voice low and reassuring. "Tonight isn't about first impressions, it's about connection." She nodded, sinking into the soft couch beside Sophie, who looked at her curiously but with kindness. Emily felt a small thrill of nervous energy, knowing that she was about to share herself more deeply than she had before, and that Daniel's family would listen without judgment. Daniel leaned back in his chair, watching her with a quiet intensity that made her pulse quicken. "Tell them your story," he said simply, and Emily realized he wasn't asking for the rehearsed versions of her life, but the real moments, the small truths that shaped her. She took a deep breath and began to speak, starting with her childhood, the small victories she had quietly cherished, the moments that had taught her resilience, the little quirks that made her who she was. She didn't hold back, describing her dreams, her fears, even the insecurities she usually kept hidden, and as she spoke, she felt a strange lightness, as if letting go of these thoughts made them less heavy. Margaret listened with rapt attention, her hands folded gently in her lap, occasionally nodding, her expression softening with understanding. James put down his book and leaned forward, his eyes calm but full of curiosity. And even Sophie smiled warmly at a story about Emily's childhood mishap. Emily felt seen in a way she had never expected, not just acknowledged, but understood, and a sense of quiet relief washed over her. She glanced at Daniel, whose hand brushed hers lightly under the couch. cushions, a gentle reminder that he was there, supporting her, orchestrating this moment with care. The conversation flowed naturally, but Daniel guided it subtly, asking questions that encouraged reflection, questions that made Emily think about her values, her goals, and what truly mattered to her. "What's something you've always wanted to try but never had the chance to?" he asked, and Emily's mind raced through memories of dreams shelved for practicality or fear. She shared a few quietly, laughing softly at the absurdity of some, and Margaret encouraged her with warmth. "There's no reason not to chase them, Emily. Life is too short to hold back." Emily felt a spark of hope, a gentle validation that her choices and dreams mattered, that she didn't have to shrink herself to fit anyone's expectations. James spoke then, his voice calm and thoughtful. "Daniel has always admired honesty and courage, the kind that comes from knowing yourself." Emily looked at Daniel, realizing that he had arranged this evening not just to impress his family, but to create a space where she could express herself fully, be vulnerable without fear, and be accepted. The thought made her heart swell with gratitude and love. She had expected nerves and pressure, but instead she found acceptance, warmth, and a sense of belonging that felt almost overwhelming. Sophie joined in the conversation with gentle teasing, making Emily laugh openly, a sound that felt natural and free, not forced or polite. The family shared small stories of their own, moments of joy and struggle, laughter and quiet reflection, and Emily felt herself connecting with them not as strangers or future in-laws, but as people, real people who had lived, loved, and made mistakes, just like she had. The dynamic was different from a usual first meeting. It was deeper, richer, and Emily realized she was starting to see Daniel's family not just as his parents and sister, but as a part of his world, the people who shaped him, the roots that held him steady. Daniel watched her carefully, his quiet encouragement subtle but constant. He never interrupted, never pressured, but his presence was grounding, a steady anchor that made her feel safe. She noticed the small gestures, his hand brushing hers when she laughed, his eyes holding hers with silent reassurance, the soft smile he gave whenever she hesitated. It was as if he had orchestrated every question, every pause, every laugh to create this space, a space where she could shine without fear, and Emily felt a deep appreciation for the thoughtfulness and love behind it. As the evening continued, the topics shifted naturally, moving from dreams and fears to shared experiences, childhood memories, and the small everyday moments that shaped them. Emily told stories she had never shared before, and each time, the family responded with warmth, understanding, and gentle humor, making her feel lighter, freer, more herself than she had in years. She realized that Daniel's idea of meeting them differently wasn't about acting in a particular way. It was about creating connection through openness, honesty, and care, and it worked beautifully. Margaret complimented her on her perspective, saying softly, "You have a way of seeing life that's refreshing, Emily. It's clear why Daniel loves you." Emily felt her cheeks flush, not with embarrassment, but with a deep sense of belonging and validation. James nodded in agreement, his calm eyes warm. "He's lucky to have you, Emily, and I can see you've found a way to be yourself while also understanding him." The words felt like a gentle embrace, reassuring and affirming in a way Emily had never anticipated. Daniel smiled quietly at the exchange, squeezing her hand under the table, and Emily realized that he had set all of this up not just for his parents, but for her, to give her the confidence to be herself, to see the family as people, not intimidating figures, to feel connected. Before the whirlwind of wedding preparations took over, she felt a quiet gratitude, a deep love for the man who understood her so completely, who thought of not just the big moments but the small, meaningful ones that mattered more than anyone else might notice. Just as Emily was beginning to relax completely, a soft chime from the door announced another visitor. Daniel's cousin, Michael, stepped inside, carrying a small tray of homemade treats, his easygoing smile making the room feel even warmer. He greeted everyone and immediately started teasing Sophie, who rolled her eyes but laughed anyway. Emily joined in, laughing with ease, the room buzzing with a mix of gentle humor and affection. It was intimate, familial, and Emily felt herself sinking further into the comfort of connection, feeling fully part of something larger than herself. Daniel leaned closer, whispering softly, "See, this is how I wanted you to meet them, not just as my fiancé, but as someone they can see, truly see." Emily, she nodded, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness, understanding finally dawning. It wasn't about impressing them or performing perfectly, it was about sharing herself, being open, and feeling the warmth of acceptance in return. A quiet joy settled in her chest, a certainty that she was in the right place, with the right people, at the right time. The conversation flowed into the evening, laughter and stories filling the room. Emily shared dreams, little fears, moments of pride, and the family responded with encouragement, gentle humor, and heartfelt interest, Daniel's hand occasionally brushing hers, grounding her, reminding her of the connection that was always there. It wasn't just a meeting, it was a bridge being built, a foundation of trust, understanding, and love, and Emily felt a profound sense of gratitude, realizing how rare and special this kind of openness truly was. As the night drew on, the family began to prepare for dinner, Emily helping with small tasks, sharing light moments with Sophie and Michael, and occasionally exchanging soft smiles with Daniel. The home felt alive, filled with warmth, laughter, and the quiet magic of belonging. Emily realized that this was more than just preparation for a wedding. It was preparation for a life together, for connection, for love that went beyond the surface. She felt lighter, freer, more herself than ever. The nervousness from earlier replaced with a quiet confidence and a deepening love for Daniel. Before leaving, Margaret pulled Emily aside, holding her hands gently. "Thank you for being yourself tonight, Emily," she said softly. "It means more to us than you know." Emily felt a lump in her throat, her eyes glistening slightly. Touched by the genuine warmth and acceptance, she looked at Daniel, who smiled softly, pride and love evident in his eyes, and she knew, without a doubt, that she was exactly where she was meant to be. As they walked out into the cool night air, hand in hand, Emily felt a calm certainty, a quiet joy, and a deep connection not just to Daniel, but to his family, the people who had shaped him and now welcomed her into their world. She realized that meeting them differently had changed everything, transforming nerves into confidence, uncertainty into belonging, and Emily's heart swelled with gratitude, love, and anticipation for the life that awaited them together. The morning after that evening, Emily woke up with a sense of quiet excitement. Her mind replayed the conversations, the laughter, and the warmth from Daniel's family. She felt lighter, freer, more herself than she had ever imagined possible. But a small part of her wondered how the final days before their wedding would unfold. Would she be able to carry this ease and connection into the whirlwind that was surely coming? She shook off the thought, focusing instead on the love she felt for Daniel, the man who had guided her through meeting his family in a way that felt meaningful, authentic, and even magical. By mid-morning, Daniel called her, his voice calm and reassuring. "Ready for today?" he asked, and Emily smiled at the sound of it. The plan for today was simple but unusual. Daniel wanted them to spend the day with his family in a casual, everyday way, not a formal visit or a rehearsal dinner. "We'll just be together," he explained. "You, me, and them, doing normal things, seeing life the way I do." Emily agreed, curious and a little nervous, but trusting him completely. She dressed simply again, feeling more confident now that she understood the meaning behind his words. When she arrived at his family home, the front door opened almost immediately, Margaret's smile warm, welcoming, and effortless. "Emily, you're just in time," she said, and Emily felt a wave of calm wash over her. Daniel stepped aside, holding the door, and Emily felt the familiar thrill of connection. The house smelled of coffee and fresh bread, just like the night before, but today it felt more alive, more intimate, as if the family was inviting her into their everyday life, not just the polished, first meeting version. Daniel's father, James, was sitting at the table with a newspaper in hand, nodding at her with a gentle smile. "Good morning, Emily," he said, and she felt the same quiet reassurance she had felt yesterday. Sophie waved from the couch, and Emily waved back, feeling the ease of being seen as part of the family now. The energy was relaxed, unpressured, and Emily realized that Daniel had created this moment to show her the rhythm of his life, the small, meaningful moments that mattered to him. The idea of meeting them differently today wasn't about stories or appearances, but about living, observing, and connecting naturally. Breakfast was simple but shared warmly. Emily helped set the table, laughing at Sophie's playful teasing, and Daniel guided small conversations without ever forcing them, letting moments unfold naturally. Emily realized that the beauty of this approach was in its simplicity. No performance was required, only presence, only openness, and only honesty. She felt a growing sense of belonging, realizing that Daniel's family didn't just accept her. They valued her for who she truly was, and she felt herself growing closer to them in a way that words could barely describe. After breakfast, Daniel suggested a walk in the nearby park, the sun soft, casting a golden light over the trees. Emily wrapped her jacket around herself, feeling the cool breeze, and followed him out, Margaret and James trailing behind, Sophie a few steps ahead. Laughing at something Michael had said earlier, Emily felt a sense of normalcy that was almost intoxicating. Seeing Daniel in this everyday setting, interacting naturally with his family, made her fall in love with him all over again. She noticed the small gestures, the way he listened attentively to his father, the gentle humor he shared with his sister, the quiet way he guided her hand to his. These were the little details of his character that words alone couldn't capture. During the walk, conversations drifted from trivial topics to meaningful reflections. Daniel asked Emily about her childhood dreams, and she shared them without hesitation. His parents listened, nodding and smiling, and Emily felt seen and valued. Sophie teased her gently, but Emily laughed along, feeling fully included every step of the way. Daniel's eyes met hers with quiet encouragement, reassuring her that she was exactly where she belonged. She realized that this was what he had wanted all along, for her to experience his life, his family, and himself not as a formal version, but as the real, everyday people they were. By mid-afternoon, they returned to the house, Emily feeling more relaxed than ever. They spent time cooking together, preparing lunch, and sharing stories from their childhood. James showed Emily a photo album of Daniel growing up, and she laughed softly at the familiar yet surprising images. Margaret asked about Emily's family, listening with genuine curiosity, and Emily realized that she was beginning to think of them as her own family, not just Daniel's. The sense of belonging, of acceptance, and of shared love was overwhelming. and Emily's heart swelled with gratitude. Daniel kept things light but meaningful, subtly encouraging Emily to open up, to share her thoughts, and to feel comfortable in this environment. The afternoon passed in a flurry of quiet moments, helping in the kitchen, folding laundry, sipping coffee on the porch, talking, laughing, sometimes sitting in silence, and just being together. Emily realized that these small, seemingly mundane moments were the ones that would stay with her forever, the moments that showed the depth of connection, the way love and family could be simple, honest, and beautiful. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, Daniel suggested they all sit in the living room together, Emily curling up on the couch between him and Margaret, feeling the warmth of their closeness. The room was quiet, but the silence was comfortable, filled with the presence of people who cared for her, who wanted her to be herself. She glanced at Daniel, who looked back at her with a quiet smile, and Emily felt a surge of emotion. She realized that his idea of meeting them differently had worked perfectly. She felt integrated, accepted, and loved, and it wasn't about perfection, it was about truth, connection, and shared humanity. Then Daniel's phone buzzed quietly on the table, and he glanced at it, a flicker of concern crossing his face. Emily's stomach tightened, but he quickly looked back, smiling softly. "It's nothing, just a reminder of the week ahead," he said. "But I wanted today to be about us, about feeling at home together." Emily nodded, her heart full of affection, realizing how much thought and care Daniel had put into every step of this process, every word, every gesture, every moment designed to make her feel valued and included. As evening approached, Margaret suggested they play a board game, Sophie eagerly agreeing, Emily joining in with laughter and competitive spirit, Daniel leaning close to offer quiet encouragement, guiding her subtly without overshadowing her. The room was filled with warmth, laughter, and the quiet magic of shared time. Emily felt herself relaxing completely, feeling at home in this family, in this life. With Daniel, she realized that love wasn't just about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was about these small moments, the steady presence of someone who cared, and the acceptance of people who saw her for who she truly was. Dinner followed, a simple home-cooked meal, but Emily felt like she was part of a story bigger than herself. Daniel's family shared memories of past celebrations, small lessons learned, humorous mishaps, and Emily contributed freely, sharing moments from her own life, her parents, her childhood friends, all of it woven seamlessly into the tapestry of connection that was forming around her. She realized that these days, these hours, were more important than any rehearsal or planned event. They were about feeling at home, feeling loved, and feeling understood, and Emily cherished it deeply. As the night drew to a close, Daniel's parents pulled Emily aside, holding her hands gently. "Thank you for being yourself," Margaret said softly, her eyes glistening slightly. "It means more than you know." Emily felt tears prick her eyes, overwhelmed by the genuine warmth, gratitude, and love she felt. She looked at Daniel, whose eyes reflected pride, love, and quiet joy, and she realized how deeply he had cared about making this experience meaningful for her. She felt a connection not just to him, but to his family, a bond that had been built on trust, understanding, and shared presence. Finally, Emily and Daniel stepped outside, the cool night air brushing against them, stars beginning to twinkle in the sky. She felt calm, content, and filled with anticipation for their future together. Hand in hand, they walked slowly, talking quietly about small plans, dreams, and hopes. Emily felt a certainty she had never felt before, knowing that she belonged not just to Daniel, but to the life they were beginning together, a life rooted in connection, understanding, and love. As they reached the car, Emily looked back at the house, the laughter and warmth still echoing in her mind. She realized that meeting his family differently had transformed her perspective, changed her heart, and strengthened her love for Daniel. The week before their wedding, which could have been filled with anxiety and doubt, was instead shaping into a memory of connection, trust, and quiet, profound love. She knew that these moments, these shared experiences, would stay with her forever, guiding her as she stepped into the next chapter of her life. Daniel squeezed her hand, his eyes soft and tender. "I wanted you to see them as I do," he whispered, and Emily nodded, tears of joy brimming in her eyes. "I do," she said softly, realizing that she had not only met his family differently, she had met him differently too, seeing his care, his thoughtfulness, his love. Emily felt her heart overflow with emotion, ready for the wedding, ready for the life ahead, and most of all, ready to face it all together with Daniel. Walking into the quiet night, hearts beating together, Emily felt complete, seen, loved, and understood. She had met his family differently, and in doing so, she had discovered a new depth of love, a new understanding of connection, and a quiet joy that would carry her through the days ahead. As they drove home, hand in hand, she realized that sometimes seeing things differently could change everything, transforming nerves into confidence, uncertainty into belonging, and ordinary moments into something extraordinary.